So we're here on Sunday, the 7th of April for a work session of the Minerva Park Charter Committee. Rainey is present, but without voice, so you guys get to listen to the sultry tones of Kelly Parks again today. Let's go around the room again and say who all's present. We do not have any guests with us at the moment. Sid, Rainey,
Pam, Jen,
Eddie, Brian,
Evan, and Kelly. We got through as much as we could on Thursday. The way I see it, there's two options. The memo for Article 8 is really short. So why don't we go through Article 8, the memo for Article 8, answer some questions. And then if we're still feeling spry, we can go back through the current draft of the charter and try to green light some red sections.
well, we didn't get done last time, did we? With what we needed to do, or did we?
I mean, we got through all of it, we didn't come to agreement on all of it, hence, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And just for, do you still practicing Kendo?
also not for a decade.
Kendo's cool. It's a martial art.
All right, so I will admit I have not read the memo for Article 8. Looking through it, it looks like so Article 7 is on administrative departments. Article 8 is meant to, it looks like, kind of be the continuation of that theme with boards and commissions. So after we set forth guidelines for administrative departments and officers, most charters next turn to a discussion of municipal boards and commissions, including establishing a few specific boards and commissions at the charter level. So first question then is, what boards and commissions does the commission want to create at the charter level? Village already has a planning and zoning commission currently, so that may be a natural commission to include. Got New Albany to look at, Groveport, Dublin, Pickerington, and OBETS. Most charters also provide for a board of zoning appeals, although OBETS does not. Does anyone have thoughts they'd like to add to that?
So Rennie just asked Pam, what
Yeah,
does
so yeah, I was
planning,
about to say,
what
so
does
for
planning
purposes
zoning
of,
do today?
By our ordinance, what it talks about is, more than we actually do. But a lot of planning and like, infrastructure, engineering planning, planning things for the village, and it's hard to explain because we've never done it. Historically, the planning and zoning has been a pretty weak area with, until recently, decided on fence permits and shed permits and that kind of thing. And then if somebody wanted to put up a fence, didn't go along with the requirements, then they could ask for a variance. And planning and zoning would be the first one to hear of that variance. So before the MI development, I really can't remember planning and zoning doing very much planning. Okay. When MI came along, what happens is that because it's a new area and it's zoned and some of those types of things, then planning and zoning was part of looking at all the development standards for the council and doing that. And then as the plats were developed, it would come to planning and zoning first. And then that would, and Eric really helped move all that along because he is the planner. So then we were doing that. Within the last couple of years, it's ridiculous to make residents wait for a planning and zoning meeting to know if they can put up a fence. The code enforcement officer, or somebody can actually read the ordinance, know what it says, and know if the resident is within the guidelines. And so we don't handle anything like fence permits and that kind of thing. We do still do variances. So since we weren't doing that, we thought, okay, what do we do? And we started working on a green space plan. And the way it works is zoning, and planning zoning can do anything, and come up with all kinds of plans, but then it goes to council to, be approved. So after working for a year plus on one section of a green space plan that dealt with, one of the ponds and a couple things over, and worked with a landscape architect. We had some really good ideas, and we sent it up to council, and they really didn't approve the next step. We asked for another $10,000 so the designer could really make the architect, landscape architect, to make a detailed design. And they said no, but they gave us, I think, $2,700. They gave $2,700 for this one piece of. So that's what we do, and we still will continue to work on the green space plan, but not to the extent of, actually, if they're not going to appropriate or give me money, why should we spend it on it? So, but the other thing too that planning and zoning does is look at the ordinances and make recommendations for ordinance change, especially in zoning, what to do with the strip mall and that type of thing. I believe that planning and zoning, if we ever had economic development, Matt's been talking about economic development, planning and zoning would be involved with that. So, yeah.
So some of those fences that are in the new area have not been, are they up to code or?
I believe they are because,
Really?
yeah, we wrote the new fence ordinance, and as long as it's following that ordinance, it doesn't have to.
I know some of ours here in the park, we have a really long fence. I mean, it'll have to be really short to follow code, but some of these fences in the new area to cover the whole backyard.
I think you can do that.
Yes, you can do that.
They do that.
We had a new fence put in.
Yeah.
And then planning and zoning, or excuse me, the officer he came out and we showed him our survey and we went out and chatted and said, okay, go for it. And that worked fine.
I think there are probably illegal fences in the old part of the village because no, they weren't grandfathered in, they were just put up regardless of what the variance decision was. We had one, when we bought our house. The people who owned our house before us asked for a variance, didn't get it, and put the fence up anyway. And we tore it down eventually.
So I guess, how does that, is it just if the inspector doesn't catch it, then it just happens and?
Well, I think one of the bigger problems is there's no teeth, and nobody's actually gonna do anything if you do something that is traditionally, nobody was gonna do anything. That was number one. And number two, until MI, I don't know that Minerva Park took planning and zoning very seriously.
Sure.
And there were times we didn't even have an officer.
Right, exactly.
There was some gaps in there.
I do recall, I'm not sure if it was the last council meeting, work session, but it appears that Eric's going to be looking into some of it. It looks like the council's being urged to come up with a way to put some teeth.
Yeah.
When they don't comply with, not just these people, but put some teeth in it. So maybe we can make some progress.
So we all agree there should be a planning and zoning.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
planning to do that.
I don't think that was.
Here's what it really
I don't,
is.
that's an argument. No, here's the thing, I don't think that was an argument as to whether we should have one. It was, I'm trying to learn more about what it does and what it doesn't do.
And how much we can
I'll admit to a lot of
set up
ignorance
something
when it comes to
without
that subject.
getting into the weeds.
Actually, we have the opportunity to expand their role too by charter the definition, right? So
Well, here's what it says now, that we can
Is
do.
it full memo, save someone a blunder? By any chance?
Probably
not.
if you give me 2 minutes to finish another thought in the middle of
Look
it.
at email it to you. Can we send a charter email or the full memo on 8? Or
Yeah, on 8. So I have just the memo part, I don't have the sample charters.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to, I will admit to a whole ton of ignorance when it comes to this. So I'm trying to look at what some of the other charters do, just so that I can see some language. in front
So
of
here's
us.
and we probably got this from the state. Conduct studies and surveys relative to overall planning for the growth, development, redevelopment, rehabilitation, and renewal of the village. Prepare such plans, reports, maps, continuously review and report to council's recommendations concerning villages' capital improvement programs, which, when we do begin to get TIF money, will be incredibly important, because TIF money is for capital improvement plans. Program, cooperate with other government or private planning agencies, and then just present to some of the other things. Review requests for zoning variances.
Yeah, I'm just wondering. So, right now, how are the members of the planning and zoning commission chosen? Is it from within?
There's 5 members. There are 2 citizens at large, a chair, also a citizen, and a member of council that's a liaison, and mayor. And then anyone else that can come.
And it's appointed by council?
Yes, or probably appointed by the mayor with approval.
It's appointed by the mayor.
Right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Tony Benedetti and the mayor are both on, so 3 citizens and Tony and the mayor. And then, Eric sits in, sometimes the code enforcement officer sits in.
So going forward, who wants it to still be the mayor that appoints the members of these boards and commissions? Sorry? I'm saying, why wouldn't it be council?
Yeah.
And I know I'm the guy waving the flag for mayor stuff, but this is legislative in nature. I don't really see what the executive nature of these people's work is. But maybe I'm way off, again, I don't know anything about it, so maybe I'm way off base. I don't know.
We all agree.
No, I agree with you, and it was traditionally the mayor
Because tradition and,
because
inherited
that's how
knowledge
it
and
worked,
all.
and inherited knowledge, that is it.
Would, that amendment would be appropriate for the administrator and planning and zoning?
I would say.
Oh, I would think so.
And what about requiring the mayor to attend it?
No.
At their discretion?
Well,
Just-
I think the mayor can probably attend whatever they want.
I mean, the mayor could go, but I mean,
Okay, no, it's just that one of them had language that said, one of the other tribes has language specifically said the mayor must be involved.
oh, really?
That's the reason.
I got it.
Is that the same form as ours?
No,
There's a mayor, council form of government?
Heck, the more I'm reading on this, I think it would be irresponsible to continue letting the executive choose the member, especially for zoning, for a board of zoning appeals or anything like that, because then if you have the mayor or administrator appoint those members, then you have everything stacked on one side of the aisle. There's no balance of power.
Any variances actually goes before council.
Well, right,
Mayor
there's,
has to
I
decide.
mean,
Yeah.
I mean appeals.
Right,
Are we currently handling appeals? I think we outsource the appeals to an outside court.
We did, but I don't know if we're doing that anymore. Are we doing that?
So look, we
Zoning
just,
appeal.
we just on Thursday talked about the judicial powers of mayor. We can absolutely bring that back home if we want to.
What did they have in mind as far as putting some more teeth in people who do not follow the rules? I mean,
From what right now, it's by statute, so however they do that, I think we can change amounts and things, but I don't know if we have not talked about it, planning and zoning has not talked about
somebody
it.
just runs a note that they do that.
And if Tony's the liaison to planning and zoning, he didn't tell us the council was looking at putting more teeth into.
Well, I think it was just an off-the-cuff discussion that they were having.
Well, and I think that the issue currently with council has to do with the rivers of trash that are coming from the dumpsters along Cleveland Avenue and affecting people like me and my neighbors. I think that's been this is the problem with planning and zoning, in my opinion. This is the problem that has been, is that it is reactive. There is no planning. There was no planning except for MI. There was only dealing with, hot button issues as they came up, and with very little historical guidance to help council or the mayor go forward to make, informed and logical decisions about what should happen. So there's been a lot of, I think at various times, zoning has been a contentious issue because there's been no framework.
So, thanks, Corinne just gave me Groveport, and Groveport both has a planning and zoning commission, which then has citizens on it, and a board of zoning appeals, which then has citizens on it. My first reaction is that, Dublin and New Albany both. We're kind of a small village, and I don't know if we have that many citizens that will be wanting to be on all of these. I don't know.
So
And
I agree,
Yeah.
and I would say that I'm wondering if a zoning appeals board could be stood up ad hoc, right? Because I don't know that we've had a zoning appeal, right, in 6 years.
Right, but that's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy situation though. If we're not really enforcing much, then there's not much to appeal.
I don't know.
If we give it more teeth, if we actually start holding people to task, then you're gonna start seeing more appeals. as
Then
a
we're
natural-
gonna need an appeals process.
I think that putting in the council can form boards and commissions might cover that, because I think somewhere in there, they do give council the right to set up boards and commissions that may be necessary. Not saying we shouldn't necessarily provide for it, but I'd be very mandating it, because, like she said, how many people are gonna wanna get involved?
so going with what Brian was talking about, it's sort of an act that happens when it needs to happen. Is that what you're saying? There are variances every now and then. Zoning kinds of big zoning things don't happen very often. That has some interest. And then planning, actually, the planning commission could do planning.
I do,
It is in the one right now.
I do think,
Which folder, or is it just in?
It's just in the general, you might have to refresh the page.
I do think that we need to provide some sort of guidance or structure concerning planning. Whether there's an ad hoc committee that comes together to deal with zoning appeals as they come up, that's a perfectly fine idea, not a group that has to maintain some sort of cohesion, but on a case-by-case basis. That's interesting, but the planning portion and ad hoc planning commission with council members and or mayor and or manager might not be a bad idea, because I think that it's unwise not to include just regular citizens in the planning process.
So,
And those planning commissions do have.
And most, a number of citizens, yes.
alright, So I guess breaking this down into, it's two fundamental parts, at least as far as planning and zoning goes. There's the planning side and the zoning side. I'm looking at these other charters and they keep it super basic. There's not a ton of detail. It's basically composition of the board, and the powers and duties statement is just super general. Like on the planning side, it's virtually silent. It just basically says, yeah, take recommendations to council. That's the extent of the charter level instructions on the planning side. On the zoning side, there's a little bit more. There's discussion in the other charters of, you will hear appeals, you'll process applications for variance, all of those things. But
Could you make the font a little? Please.
And,
This is,
figure out
but
how to
I think, even though I was unhappy that council didn't fund what we asked them to fund, that I think having them sort
Does that
of
work?
separate
Yes,
is good, so planning.
having them separate is really, I
I mean,
think, key.
having council and planning separate.
Yes,
Yeah, so that the planning part can do the planning and then keep council well informed.
Right.
So they know what's happening.
right.
That's liaison. But then, yeah, because council's the one that will either start to put up money for a planning process or fund it in the end.
Right.
So I guess my question then becomes, do we want to do, it looks like New Albany has a planning commission. Oh, okay, that is their zoning and planning commission, they just call it the planning commission. And then they have their board of zoning appeals. I guess
I think giving us an
it
ad
seems
hoc
pretty, it
zoning
seems pretty
appeals board.
ubiquitous, yeah, it seems pretty ubiquitous to just, I mean, these are all kind of, all three of the examples are basically doing the same thing as far as I can see.
Didn't Eric speak to having a local zoning appeals board? He told us that was
Yeah,
a good idea.
I like the idea, I like the idea of it being local, because the local people will understand what's going on in the neighborhood, and that's much better than going somewhere else, in
And
my mind.
I agree, and I don't, again, I'm gonna say, I don't think it's wise to keep, I do think that it should be sort of an ad hoc committee that needs to be made up of citizens and as we wish.
It's interesting to me because I feel like zoning and planning affects so much, especially in smaller, with any size community.
Yeah.
But these articles are super.
Yeah.
They're super, super high level. At the end of the day, Sid was talking about teeth. I don't know how you, under these setups, I don't know how other than processing applications and having a yes or no stamp on individual property owners' applications.
Well,
There's no teeth here because anything like, Pat just told us all the work they did for a year, they went to, Pam, sorry. They did all that work for a year, took it to council and council said no.
so
So
I
do we,
agree with
do we try to fix that or that's how everybody else is doing it, do we keep it?
I like the way everybody else does it. I think it was just, and I was the chair. I had asked that money be put in the budget for this planning thing we were doing. I assumed that it was, and it wasn't to me as a extent. So, I think there just needed to be more accountability.
I mean,
Make sure there was money in there. Now, we can still say no.
Right, I'm just gonna say, I feel like that's still a good example as a general discussion, right? The planning commission could absolutely spend a year of time and exploration money and all this other stuff, get community feedback, and they're still just gonna be taking a proposal to council, just like I could take a proposal to council tomorrow,
And
right?
Eric has said that has happened. He's been in municipalities where that's happened. But having done all that planning, my guess is people let it just die.
In probably in your situation, it was a problem with communication between the mayor and the council as to whether things have been passed.
Yeah, I think it was, there were,
Or you define where you can go and get the answer. It must be-
So, I guess let me put this question to everybody, then maybe we can cut to the heart a little bit. Should I use kind of the ubiquitous language in these three charters, but add in a provision, requiring that these commissions liaison with the village administrator or something. I mean, do we want to force communication and involvement with at least the village administrator?
New Albany, oh, that's, I see, instead of,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's actually a really good idea.
Or
I don't
Oh,
I was gonna
know
say-
that we can,
New Albany also has a council liaison, they've got 5 members.
it's council liaison, but in my mind, what's the point of the village administrator if they're not gonna be forced to liaison with
Right,
with these groups?
right,
Well, if the administrator genuinely attends or whatever, I like New Albany. I just, I like New Albany.
So, New Albany plus?
yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I don't think we can do anything about, my hope is that whoever is on council, if the charter is approved, whoever's on council after it's approved will read between the lines and understand that we're trying to get the council to do its business in an entirely different way and actually take these things that they have, just sort of pushed aside, take these things more seriously. But I don't know that we can build teeth into anything other than
Right.
asking them, forcing the issue of having to cooperate and communicate with the village manager and with the public.
Potentially dumb question, what falls into planning? Is planning mostly for, things like the MI edition and the strip mall, or would the planning commission put forth recommendations to council about things like sewer lines or a new park or something like, and what was encompassed in planning? That's
A lot of things are
Yes.
encompassed in planning.
By statute, a lot of things.
Right,
Coming up with priorities for when there is TIF money, what kind of things are gonna be done. I
so
don't think they manage it.
they just say, here's what we think the village should,
Yes,
Yeah.
here's a project we think the village should do, should
And
explore.
since I've
whatever.
never done it, I don't,
I think
Wouldn't
that,
that be a great tool for the village to use?
yes, it would be a fabulous tool for the village to use, yes.
I think we're just getting to the point, probably it hasn't been a whole lot needed, but I think.
I think that's good. I think,
No,
I don't know, I have a gut feeling the next 5 or 10 years is gonna be all about planning for things like better parks, we've got the school coming in,
Yeah.
all of that kind of stuff.
Brady just said, we need to develop this, or how we would like it to be.
Yeah,
How we would like it. to be.
that's exactly right, and it's gonna be coming very quickly.
So how do we
Is
do this
the
at the church?
replacement of this building, that's coming soon. And there needs to be citizen and logical input on what that's gonna be.
So here's my question then.
New Albany has, it talks about having 6 members. 5 are voting members, and then the council liaison. So I think that's a nice number. We put the administrator in there, and maybe it has the administrator, the council liaison, and then 4 or 5.
They recommended we have odd numbers though, for ties.
Okay,
Well, right, but I wouldn't want the administrator to have a vote.
no, I
No,
don't
right.
think the administrator nor the council member would have voted.
Right, okay. So I guess 4 or 5, or sorry, you said.
Sorry.
So
Fine.
five that are voting, and then
Right.
a council liaison and the village manager.
Going to Pam's earlier question though, how many people are we starting to need to have appointed in this village for all the various things? Because presumably there's also gonna need to be people on the Board of Zoning Appeals.
I'm counting on some of you guys to.
that was I thought that the Board of Zoning Appeals is something that could be stood up ad hoc, because I
Right.
think it's easier to get a group of reasonably minded individuals to show up to adjudicate one zoning appeal than to get them to show up every Thursday,
Exactly.
especially since that need. And I know we are anticipating maybe more, but if we've had 0 for the last 6 years and it triples, that's still,
I mean,
0 for the next.
I feel like it would be easy enough to write in that the Board of Zoning Appeals can be created from time to time by council and for a period of time as determined necessary. by
Yeah,
council.
perfect.
So they can commission one for a month, or they can commission one for a year, based on whatever's going on.
And, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And Delmer says, Board of Zoning Appeals, Board of Zoning Appeals should consist of 5 elected officials of the city, should serve overlapping 3 terms. That's it. And then what their powers are, so you could take sub-.704 Dublin and have a language that you just, or incorporate that language you just.
So powers from Dublin, with the whole overlapping 3-year terms, I feel like Brian is suggesting maybe double that, and just say
Right.
council shall
Just add
create
on
from
that.
time to time.
Maybe
Maybe
the,
add a no term greater than,
right,
no term greater than 2 years.
People like that.
Well, I don't think you even need.
I'm not sure you need that.
I mean, I think you could just say an ad hoc committee to deal with these things as they occur.
Sure. So the other hand, and I know I'm the one who started the ad hoc, but the other hand of that is that a council could name a Board of Zoning Appeals, you give no end of term. The language was from time to time for as long as they see fit.
That's
It
true.
could be
Permanent
It
commission,
could be
yeah.
in perpetuity, these
Well-
5 people are forever. And while, again, I have a very low expectation that this will come up, when it does come up, I think it's high impact.
So maximum 3-year term?
Yeah, that's.
Or
I would-
two.
two would be my preference,
Two,
but-
it doesn't matter as long as it's not,
Right.
until the person is, buried. And, to speak to what you just said about, you're worried about the number of people we're gonna need.
I figured you brought it up and it kind of stuck in there.
So, this is one of the things that has been a problem, is that that discussion has been the stopping point for a lot of things. How are we gonna get that many people who are gonna care enough? Well, it's time for us to put it out there and let this process either work or fail based on, you okay?
Just second or third degree burn.
You burn your beard.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's nice.
I mean, it's time to stop worrying about whether or not we're gonna have people involved in the process and put the process together and say, hey, this is now the process and we need people to be involved in it and see what happens.
You know what, maybe we can solve.
Yes,
Oh,
which one
geez.
you want, which one do you want me to read? Okay, she's asking, are there people begging? There are people begging for ways to get involved.
Okay,
Thank you.
so,
Are there?
so building off of that and what Jen said and kind of what I said earlier, which is, I feel like these our charters are super kind of vague. I would like to suggest that we think about forcing council to listen in some way to the recommendations from, can we build, I mean, maybe in this article or one of the previous ones on legislative or council or something, can we build in some kind of requirement that council has to at least pretend to listen to these recommendations before?
No.
You can force them to hear. You
Well,
can
you
force them to listen.
yeah,
Right,
Yeah,
and
that's
so
what I
we
meant, that's what I
can, we can write in, before, I think this is kind of similar to my point I was trying to get, that when it's infrastructure, there has to be a point of communication. We can find, when it's planning related, we can find a point that we say you have to have a public, session where planning and zoning addresses council specific to a topic, right? I think you can do that. But you can't, there's nothing you can say, and then council follows that recommendation.
sure, you can't force council to actually enact ordinances, but I feel like there needs to be something more than what's in
Yes.
these
Look,
charters.
I'm reading.
Because these charters have a wonderful system that can be completely ignored.
Yeah,
Like I'm doing
yeah.
training right now.
You know how, we talked about the administrator needs to, have a financial report and an administrative report. What if the planning commission is required by law to do a, report?
Like an annual report?
Yes,
Quarterly. I think
not
The
enough.
planning commission shall present in open meeting of council a quarterly report on, I don't know how to word it, but on something, on
On all current activities.
all current, yeah, activities, yeah,
I
okay.
mean, so in truth, today, it's supposed to be the council liaison, but every meeting is giving a report. But in the last 6 years, that's mostly, yeah, we did some stuff and a few things, and now let's move on, right?
Right.
It has not been substantive.
So you just get, I'm envisioning, so you just get, if you as the planning, put on the agenda then for the council meeting, just like all the
We'll
other.
be receiving a report
Once
from
a quarter.
the planning commission.
Okay.
That is excellent.
To give it as
Because it is a way,
substantive.
in addition to the liaison, in addition to the administrator, it's another way to communicate with council.
Well, plus it gives citizens who are attending a council meeting or watching my stream, my everybody,
Everybody has the opportunity.
to hear what's going on.
And it's not how the council liaison perceives the ongoing activities of planning and zoning. It's how planning and zoning wants to communicate those activities, which I suspect could largely be different,
Yes.
Yes.
depending on who
Well,
that
and it's
council liaison
also, it's also the opportunity for them to raise red flags or green flags, either one. They could go in that quarterly report in the council meeting and say, hey, our zoning appeals have increased by 350% in the last 3 months.
Right.
What's going on? We need to talk about this, and then someone is gonna listen and say, yeah, why don't we talk about that? That seems weird to me, or something. I like it. Cool.
Are we requiring these reports to be published?
I think we should.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
I think it should be a written report. If we're gonna do this, let's do it.
And online too. Post
Yeah.
Oh, that's an excellent idea. And make them do it right.
And that also ties into our transparency and communication goal.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. Anything else on question 1?
Sorry, Evan.
You're doing so well. I'm here till noon either way.
Okay,
That was wrong.
so it was the question one, what other boards and things do you want?
Right, that was. the
So are there
next step.
nominees? I always like to make decisions. I always like to hear nominees, and then we just kind of think. I mean, we had talked about a Parks and Recreation Board. And
Oh, yeah.
I think we,
I thought we tabled
yeah,
that.
I know that Nina was strongly in favor of it, but I think that the conversation was that it would be, there wasn't enough for them to do at this moment, but we would give the council the opportunity to create it. I think that's how we ended up.
Yeah, that's how we ended it.
yeah, because we will give council the ability to.
So would we want to make like a safety commission, so taking,
Oh, I would love it if we had a safety,
so,
a
so
safety commission. Oh,
a citizen-led safety commission
Yes.
would, you know, I don't know how much authority we could give that commission, but, you know, similar to planning and zoning, they would look at our police and fire activities and procedures and.
I can see a
advise
bunch
on
of
that.
6 on our sides right now. Coming from that
No.
committee that will be completely ignored.
Okay, so,
It's just a third, it's just a-
no, I love it. Oh, my God, because I have never heard this village talk about emergency management.
Never, never.
As far as I know, this building doesn't have a workable generator.
No,
No.
it does
So,
not.
I think that is a wonderful idea.
Safety/emergency management.
Yeah, just.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can combine those. I worry that there might be some state laws that require emergency management to be handled in a specific way.
Or
Well,
a certain
no,
level, it might
no,
be
actually,
something
Franklin
more.
Glenn County does a lot, and that's what I keep hearing when I ask about emergency management to the village. Oh, so-and-so will take care of that.
Right.
So-and-so will take care of that.
Yeah, but Franklin County's not gonna give us a generator.
Franklin County's not gonna help in any way, and our last emergency was, Hurricane,
Oh,
I-
that's power.
okay? Was it Ike or Isaac? Ike,
Are you
okay.
talking about?
I care about
To
way everybody.
liaison directly with
So-
AEP to get our name out.
Tons of trees were down and the entire emergency management system, which I'm not faulting her. She actually did an excellent job, was the mayor walking from street to street, taking notes, finding out who needed what and starting the process of getting trees cut out of roadways and stuff like that. But it was her and that was it.
And there wasn't necessarily, those kind of things go easier if you have a plan in place before.
If you have a plan in
Right,
place
but
and you
when
have multiple people who can help execute that plan.
What if we put in, this is getting a little bit ahead, but I want to get it out before I forget. What if we put in a provision requiring that the council liaison that is on any of these boards must be one of the council people that are a member of the corresponding subcommittee, if that subcommittee exists? So if there's a safety board, then, and there's a safety subcommission in the council, then it can't just be a random council person, it has to be one of the council people on that subcommittee.
Can't we say
So that
it
they
doesn't exist, that it has to exist?
I don't know. I mean, we can say that.
I don't know.
Well, so I think planning and zoning doesn't necessarily have a correlated.
Well, in the
Subcommittee.
community, is there still a
But is
community chair?
Yeah, there is, but would it be more community or legislation, right? Because the work of the zoning, while it affects what goes on in the community, its work funnels through legislation. So, which is more effective for planning and zoning? I think legislation would be my guess, but your mind went to community, right?
It
So,
did, because community is over,
yeah,
things that happen in the community. Maybe council decides
yeah.
which one they want to.
So I've written down as potential boards, commissions, planning and zoning, safety, emergency management.
Can we talk about economic development too, at one point?
And I think it was brought up, Pam suggested just writing down a list and going through it.
Planning and zoning, or is that a separate?
If you want to,
I think it would be.
Oh, yeah, personally.
it's just as,
But I know
they
they're-
create a parks and recreation board, the board shall have the powers to turn on like council and that kind of stuff, a placeholder. That's what they wanted, a placeholder for parks and rec.
I'll admit, I'm a little worried about working at cross purposes or duplicative work. Like, at the end of the day, is Parks and Rec gonna do anything that the planning side of planning and zoning wouldn't do?
They could organize a league team. They could organize the basketball tournament schedule, should we ever build a basketball court. They could organize a village, summer camp program. They could,
So could we call it recreation and social activities or something instead of Parks and Rec? Because I feel like planning is gonna do parks stuff.
I think Parks and Rec would be, planning would plan a part, but I think Parks and Rec would be in.
Yeah.
Would actually
and
do
administer.
it.
Yeah.
Is that, okay, so maybe I'm just
Because
making
cleaning
it.
stuff,
because
I would
certainly,
say the term, I think, Parks and Rec.
That's fair too.
yeah, certainly Westerville has both a planning
Okay.
department and a parks and recreation department.
Anything, any
Sorry,
other,
that heard that conversation.
this, all this stuff? Any other potentials?
This is for a question, but my council only has the creation of rules for rules and commissions, and then it doesn't apply to anything else. So it could be decided by your council that specifies what requirements are. But I think that's more important than taking the actual committees.
Except for the committees that we absolutely need.
Right, we have to mandate at least planning and zoning.
We need to mandate planning and zoning. I would love to mandate safety and emergency management, and I would love to mandate economic development. But
I'm still kind of coming down to, what's the difference between planning and economic development? I feel like those are kind of the same thing.
well,
I think that economic development can live within planning.
right,
I think that, yeah, but I also think that you can change the focus or the scope if you have just an economic development group, right? So if you're part of a commission that is wondering about park space, right? And then how much of your percentage of your time is economic development? But if you're a commission that's just economic development, all of your time is economic development. You know what I'm
I
saying?
mean, counterpoint to that though is if so let's talk about the strip mall, right? That's an obvious subject matter for economic development.
Yes.
Wouldn't you also want that commission to be well versed in and discussing zoning issues? Because
Sure.
zoning is tied up in
Yeah.
what goes on in that strip mall.
I mean, I think the size of the village, the two can be together. They are very different, although related animals in larger places.
What if we just, I mean, I think Rainey has a good point though. We mandate planning and zoning, and if council starts to say, hey, this has gotten way too big of a thing, we need to split this out into its own economic development commission, whatever, then they can do that.
So Rainey said, can we call them the same for now? And then they can split out later if it makes sense.
That's,
So planning and economic development.
And to get back to Rainey's point of the general rules for boards and commission, I think we should start out just like that, through the general
Sure.
rules and then go on.
Yeah, and that's in New Albany, right?
Well,
Yeah, I like New Albany.
After you finish this section.
Oh, yeah, go
I have
Oh,
a comment about Parks and Rec, but go ahead. Finish what you're doing.
I was just going to have.
You go ahead.
One other, so this is good.
What about NPCA and Parks and Rec?
well, so here's my take on that. MPCA needs to worry about MPCA's business.
Yeah, but they might be doing the same activity.
And MPCA needs to manage MPCA's business. As much as I love MPCA and I am active and I help and I lift heavy things and reach high shelves for them as much as possible, we are planning our own plan.
I'm just, I brought the question up, because looking at what the activities they do
Well,
compared to what.
so we go back to the list of ideas just off the top of my head, right? I said, you know, if we had a basketball court, a Parks and Rec could do a basketball tournament, organize that. MPCA is not organizing any basketball tournaments currently, right? I said they could set up a day camp program. I know I went to a municipal day camp, summer day camp, right? MPCA is certainly not doing that, right?
When they do the Christmas,
Parks and Rec, that we can't, I don't think it's on this body to,
well, I agree, I just brought up the idea of what you're thinking about.
yeah, well,
And
it's,
the activities.
So
I'm not
It's-
pushing either way.
it's MPCA, traditionally organizations like MPCA, they are created because a community or some institution, whatever it is too small to have any kind of legislative processes to deal with community activities that would have, in larger places, fallen under Parks and Rec, really, or something like that. We still need MPCA, and we need more of everything else that's official and can directly liaise with the legislative body of the village.
I mean, if there were a Parks and Rec commission, there's no rule saying that they could not liaison with
With
MPCA
MPCA,
and go on joint ventures
Yeah.
whenever it is.
I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I think MPCA can still be MPCA. I don't really think we need a Parks and Rec department yet. We may in the future. I mean, I would love to
That's
see it.
about the question.
I would love to
I want
see
to try to
it,
focus this back in,
Okay.
really kind of get us out of the weeds a little bit. So, last thing on number one, I've got a check mark next to planning and zoning. Everybody agrees that we're going to have planning and zoning.
but yes.
A planning commission and a zoning
You want those?
board of
to-
appeals.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Jen has said that she feels it is important for there to be a safety commission and an emergency management commission. How does everyone else, what does everyone else?
Safety and emergency management, they're together.
You want them to- So she was saying separate, that's why I'm trying to get a
Well,
clear
no.
shape to,
I'm
let's
asking,
discuss this for 4 or 5 minutes.
I'm asking the question, it makes sense that they would be together, but I'm asking the question if we have to abide by some state rules concerning emergency management, that's all. I'm perfectly fine with them being together, and I get how they nest, but I'm wondering about that.
Because just to remind everyone, so we've all agreed, we're gonna have general rules for boards and commissions, and we're gonna mandate certain ones that we want to have exist, whether council likes it or not, right? So the question really is, do we want to mandate a safety and emergency management commission? Do we want to mandate a parks and rec commission? Do we want to mandate an economic development? I'm getting the sense, I put an X next to economic development. I got a general sense that everyone agreed that could just live within planning and zoning and then be broken out when necessary. Do we need to mandate a safety and emergency management, or can we just trust council to create it if necessary? That's the question before.
I don't think we can trust council to create it. I think we need to mandate it, but
Would I mandate, will I write that as one commission, that's one body of people?
Yes.
So one more question, could we
Yeah.
do planning, zoning, and economic development
I
commission?
mean, we can certainly call it that, but it's just a mouthful. I still think those are the same thing
Yeah.
personally, but. Easy to eat. So there you go.
oh, love that.
Could do PEZ as
I was thinking,
Visa.
visa, oh, I like that.
All right, so,
It's zoning, okay. Again, I would do a planning and economic development commission and the zoning board of appeals, two separate.
The zoning board of
so,
appeals
but
would
the
be,
zoning board of appeals only deals with appeals, right? It wouldn't
That's
deal
all.
with
Right.
zoning planning.
Right, planning deals with zoning planning. I think,
So I think we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah,
I'm still
yeah.
calling it a planning and zoning commission, and then a board of zoning appeals.
and that's fine.
Yeah.
And New Albany, it's the board of zoning appeals. They make it
I'll make
by,
it sound all fancy. Okay.
and I don't know, I mean, I think Parks and Rec would be a
I was
great
gonna say, that's the
idea.
last question in my mind is, do we want to mandate it?
Right now, there's a huge thing going on with getting the pool ready for the season.
The pool certainly seems to be an issue of hot discussion.
Because it was on nobody's radar, except maybe the mayor. It was on nobody's radar, what was happening with, not to the extent of actually wanting, getting things really, really, really done. And I think if there had been a Parks and Rec board, they would have had that on their radar for years.
So let's do this. Raise your hand if you think Parks and Rec needs to be a mandated board within this community. That's another 5 people.
Now, so it's a good idea,
I mean,
but I don't know if we can mandate it.
I don't think we need to mandate it, yes,
Because they can mandate. it.
council and
Okay,
mayor
can create it.
keep dropping the ball, but we can't mandate everything.
Brady thinks it's the easiest one to fill.
All right, you know what? Back to what I just said. Raise your hand if you think we should mandate a Parks and Rec board. So that's how many?
And we should bring it to the bigger committee.
Oh, yeah, like this is really a question of, should I draft
right,
a provision for it?
Because we're divided evenly right now.
Yeah, I think we are. I'll add it in, and then then we'll have another vote on Thursday. All right, and then board of zoning appeals is obviously happening. Okay, I'd like to move on to number 2 then at 10:00 a.m. Article 8 should include a general grant of authority for council to be able to create, well, yes. I'm just gonna use New Albany's if that's okay with everybody.
Are we specifically saying there's no pay for all the committees that we're creating?
Is that how it works now?
Yes, and, I would need to resign from planning if people got paid, because over the Ohio Code of Employees Retirement System, it seems like re-employed retirement. And they would.
And the pay isn't good enough?
They would withhold my, health savings, deposit, and then Yes, it's crazy.
And then Pam wouldn't be able to get her next knee replacement.
Well, that's covered by Medicare.
Okay, good.
As long as you got that.
All right.
As long as you have the donut hole, Pam.
So I think the answer that everyone's giving is no pay for the board. So number 3, general provisions applicable to the operation. I feel like we all agreed having those general rules. Sorry. Well, okay. Maybe this was the school sooner. So, yes. And I'm gonna stick with New Albany until we decide we don't like New Albany. Number 4, some charters include provisions creating a charter review commission in the article of the charter. Use a separate article to create the charter review commission. I'm confused.
So like, it has to go with 10 charter review and then specifically all that.
I like that. I've seen that in quite a few charters. And it's usually near the end.
I should have read about more than just Mayor Council. Pickerington.
Yeah, there's Article 10.
Charter review in a minute. Because it's a commission. I was like, why are we talking about this? But yeah, okay.
Except if we only give the people of Minerva Park the ability to amend the charter every 10 years, then the charter will be voted down.
No, this is to review the charter.
Or review it.
But,
Oh, no, I
He
thought
said-
we talked to said 5 years.
Yeah, we did.
Please.
5 years?
Yeah.
So,
Wait, are we to that, Jennifer? Is that where we're, I'm sorry, I was.
so see, here's the question in front of the group. And so question 4 fundamentally is asking, do you want this article, Article 8, to handle the creation and running of the charter review board? Meaning that the charter review board would follow the same general rules that we're gonna write for all of the other boards and commissions? Or do you wanna have the charter review board be handled in a completely different article farther down in the charter and have its own unique set of rules? I personally prefer option 2. Does everyone feel that, because I'm not sure I want it to be 5 members with a liaison and a blah, blah, blah. I would like to do something different personally. Okay.
Yes.
Done.
So we would have to go through the whole voting thing for the new charter?
Not necessarily, it's just I want to be able to do different rules for the charter review than the rules for the Parks and Rec.
I mean, to create.
No,
No,
the
we're
charter,
gonna have this one.
Dedicated article.
Yeah, there'll be a whole article dedicated to how that review process works.
Because there will be a review.
And it will be
My
mandated.
question is, the group that's involved, to create the commission,
No,
is that gonna be appointed?
yeah, he wants to know if it has to go on the ballot.
Yeah,
And have all the-
It wouldn't be, short answer, it would be appointed, you wouldn't have to have 15 people go get on the ballot again to sit the, I mean, we could write it that way, but I don't think we're gonna,
We
right?
have the power to write it, what you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can decide how that board is, we can decide how that commission is created in this chart.
my idea is the review board gets together and reviews the charter to see if it actually does need to be amended.
Oh, I understand.
And
Right,
then
but-
after that, if they decided it needed to be amended, then they're gonna have to create another charter commission to amend the charter, and that's
No,
where
no,
that commission goes?
Yes, but then the changes go on the ballot.
Okay,
Right?
Yeah.
I will not be voting in favor of stuff where council decides whether it needs to have a charter review. The charter review is gonna be on.
No, I totally agree.
It's the group is.
And you guys liked every 5 years.
So,
Yeah.
I-
So
We're gonna do
it's not gonna be us.
Yeah.
I
So-
think we should have its first review in 2 years.
I
its
agree,
Second review in 5 years.
I agree.
And then a cadence that we can decide, but I think it should have its first bite, we should have our first bite. Because we'll find out the crap that we did really wrong.
Yeah,
I'm gonna stop you. I think we agreed to discuss this in a later article, so let's discuss
I
it in a
know,
later.
I know, I just.
All right,
Good idea.
I've got everything I need for Article 8 then, to get it drafted.
and that only took like 10 minutes,
Well,
7 minutes.
here's the fun part, since it's only 10 o'clock, we're about to go through a bunch of red sections.
That's awesome.
So get your argument hats.
My arguing hat is always on.
Oh, I know, Jen.
It's always on, Kelly. What do you think mine is? I know, it's always on. It's one of the reasons I like you.
Now, if you're, although, we got something here, I was just, you know,
Oh, are you suggesting that we shouldn't do this with some people missing?
yeah, because I know we use this as a regular meeting and we can make decisions, et cetera, but then just because we can, should we?
That's a good question.
Well, I mean,
I don't think,
It's a work session, so.
because, yeah, I mean, we're
It's a work session, it's publicly posted, we gotta get through this stuff.
yeah, we do.
moving through this.
And we should, I think here's thinking, as many years, we don't have time now.
Correct.
Yeah.
We're here because we didn't have time to do this in regular sessions.
God, it's almost May.
Somebody wants to take off, I hate to say it.
I am thrilled to do that, I'd like to get more of this, more of what we've already done in green, which I think we can probably do a bunch of today and then like by Thursday, have it ready to go.
So, yeah. I would even, yeah, I would say,
Oh, yeah, we can
from,
do,
from a publishing perspective, I would say it's fair and reasonable just to slice out what's green, right? Adding a comment, that this is draft, but this is, pretty hard draft, and there are things missing that are not completed, and people can just read that. Like, I don't even know that we need to worry about getting any more or less out of red. We are just saying, this is what's.
I'll put in a footer, the color coding, so that it's easy to understand, hey, this is what the council feels is ready, this is what the council was still working on.
I would take out anything in red and take out any color coding.
Oh,
And
just
just give it-
entirely,
And just give them approved language.
I can do that.
Rating, yeah.
I can do that.
Even if it's just like 1 and 0.
Alright,
And then maybe next week, put out 3.
why don't I put something together, I'll email it to the group, and we can email all back saying, yes, let's publish this.
And as soon as we have that, I'll make a fresh page, charter drafts, and then do by articles, right? I'll section it out, Article 1, Article 2, Article 3.
I mean, we can publish the preamble, Article 1 and Article 2 right now.
Okay, and I heard Randy say that she wasn't a fan of, doing it broken up.
Oh, you want just one document?
No,
It's like
but
the chart that.
leaving out the red.
are in hot.
If it's not done.
Right.
then the council can say, why not this, working on it now, and I'll start.
So I'm not gonna lie, my personal preference is only publish if it's a whole article in green, I'm cool with publishing that. I don't like the idea of publishing half the mayor.
That's what she's saying.
That's what you're saying, okay, yeah. So that's my personal preference as well. So yeah, like I said, preamble, Articles 1 and 2 are ready to go. So looking at Article 3, powers of council, I have it up on the screen, is this big enough? Alright. council looked fine. So composition and terms, 302. This was something that we had wanted to ask Paul about. I did in an email, just to refresh everyone's memory. This was us asking how to properly word the four-year overlapping terms thing, so they make it clear that what's gonna happen is every 2 years, half the council gets elected while the other half are still serving through their 4-year term. I didn't know if overlapping terms was a term of art.
Right.
He sent me a proposed paragraph that I should have copied and pasted in here, and I just didn't think to do it. He says overlapping terms is not a term of art, and if we want to clarify that scheme, then we should do so. His proposed language, the members of the council under the general statutory plan of government for the village of Minerva Park at the time this charter becomes effective, including the 2 members of council elected in November 2019 for terms beginning on January 1, 2020, are hereby designated as the initial members of the council under this charter. At the regular municipal election to be held in November of 2021, and each 4 years thereafter, 4 persons shall be elected from the village at large to serve terms of 4 years each. At the regular municipal election to be held in November of 2023, and each 4 years thereafter, 2 persons shall be elected from the village at large to serve terms of 4 years each. Terms of council members shall commence as of January 1 of the year immediately following the election. So he did it by being really specific. I like it. I'd like to copy and paste it in.
Did I hear 4 and 2? Because I don't think 7 council members.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so it'd be 4 and 3.
Yes.
I think I'll typo.
They can't be. But,
Because there's only 1 person in
so you're saying that this upcoming election in 2020, we should also run the 7 council members?
So,
Kelly, could you read it again?
Members of the council, under the general statutory plan, at the time this charter becomes effective, which includes including the 2 members of council that are elected in November of 2019, are hereby designated as the initial members of the council under this charter. Stop.
Right.
Next sentence. At the regular municipal election in November of 2021, 4 persons shall be elected from the village at large, serving 4-year terms each. At the regular election in November of 2023, 2 persons shall be elected from the village at large to serve terms of 4 years each. I think his math is wrong. I think it should be 3.
So
Well,
It should be 4 and 3.
what happens from 2019 to 2021? How do we get it up to 7?
so,
in this November, it will be, we will have to, include, is this accurate? This November, we will have to include the 2 extra council members. I'm not sure how that happens if we don't have a charter yet, because the charter will be voted upon in the same election.
I'm looking at I'm looking at the email again. He's saying you have to account for the transition from a 6-member to a 7-member council. Here is some language, but it does not address the transition from 6 to 7 members, which will require additional text. I think the bottom line is that either council needs to be able to appoint someone if the charter passes, or else council needs to remain at 6 members until a later election. So this is his proposed language, but we have to decide on another way to handle that 7th member.
Is
I
that
believe
the
we do that in
transition
the
or
trans,
something?
The transition paragraph.
I feel like we use his proposed thing that I read in section 302, and then in our transition article, we either instruct council to appoint someone or something.
And we change 2 to 3 for 2023.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I will fix that, and have it ready to go for Thursday. Qualifications is good. Rules, officers, okay, clerk.
Did Kim Pulley speak to you guys?
She
The
did.
meetings that I missed?
So I sent, if you recall, our question about this was, it feels like the boilerplate language has the clerk serving 2 masters. What do we do about that? The question that I emailed to Paul was, we are seeing a lot of boilerplate language making the administrator generally in charge of the clerk, but with duties defined by council. We are concerned about confusion here as well as serving 2 masters. Can you provide some feedback? His response, I think this question is best addressed after the commission has discussed and agreed upon a chain of command for the administrator when it discusses Article 6, which we've now done. How much administrative authority is granted the mayor in Article 5? That said, given the small number of village administrative staff, it seems like the clerk will probably need to work in close coordination with council, mayor, and administrator. I think it would be beneficial to have that interconnection built into the charter to hopefully alleviate any confusion down the road, which I think is him trying to, in a roundabout way, say, stop screwing with this, it's boilerplate language for a reason.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me. It's pretty much get on with it.
I will admit, I'm still kind of bothered by these highlighted sections.
I don't know that we're gonna get away from this. This is gonna happen, whether it's an administrator having multiple masters or a clerk having multiple, this is gonna happen because Minerva Park is too small for it not to happen. And this is something that if it's not working in the end, that this is one of the reasons that I'm in favor of a first 2-year review period, because that's something that if it really is broken, it'll have to be fixed as quickly as possible, but we're gonna have to let it go. We're just gonna have to let it go.
What if
I'm not-
indeed, sorry.
I have trouble because to me, it's not about a person, clerk of council. It's about the duties of the clerk of council, because when it says that it seems like it's saying the person may be suspended or removed. And it's in the way we do it now is it's the duties are given to someone. So Becky does some of the duties of clerk of council. She does the minutes and those kinds of things.
And I think that would change here. This would become a position. In this charter, the way this charter is written, it wouldn't be
It
a
is-
list of duties that are
it is-
divvied out.
it
It would
is-
be, this is the
It
position.
is not a full-time job. It's not, part.
It's not, yeah.
No, it's
now
an
not-
appointed position, but it's
But
an important one.
it's still a position, right? It's not
The
just
duties, the clerk of council duties are a specific set of duties.
Right.
And I think that those are given to someone to do as part of their duties. So administrative assistant and zoning person is Becky, and she has been given a lot of those duties. Now, she's been given them from Kim, because I think according to statute, she's probably got the title of it.
I guess, I understand what you're saying. I guess my interpretation is that these municipalities that have charters are not doing it that way. They are saying this is a position for which a person.
So, it's only 10 hours a week. You're hiring a whole person.
well, no.
It doesn't have to be a person who has no other job. It's,
We're saying the same thing.
Yes.
Kim could also be the clerk of council. I could be the clerk of council.
So when
I mean,
when the person is removed, it's just those set of duties are removed from the person. Kim is,
correct.
okay,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, that's
Okay,
what we
so-
discussed.
Yeah,
It's just like any job. Everyone knows someone in a big office who has more than one job
Right.
title.
So what you're worried about, Pam, is that the language is, serve the pleasure of council and may be suspended or removed without cause. You're afraid that sounds like they can lose their complete job.
Yes.
That's what you're worried about.
So I don't think that it would work that way. If the fiscal officer were also the clerk of council and the council said, wow, your notes stink, we don't want you to be the clerk anymore, they would still be the fiscal officer.
Yes,
They would just not be the clerk.
but if
That's how
the
I like it.
language says can be suspended or fired or whatever, that's exactly what the language says, and that's exactly if the council's angry enough, what the council's gonna do. And then we're out fiscal officer, we're out.
I think they just want it to be a little more specific.
But now, see, it's not, the clerk of council may hold
Other
other
officers
offices
of
position.
position.
Yeah.
Right.
To serve in the position of clerk of council, can I just do that? Does that solve the problem?
Say it again.
A person to serve in the position of clerk of council.
Yeah.
The
We
clerk of
need to
council-
say something about if this person holds,
Shall serve at the pleasure.
holds multiple positions, and the council is unhappy with this person's job as the clerk of council, they can remove those duties from that person and choose someone else to have those duties. But they cannot summarily get rid of someone from all of their positions in the village just because they're angry about the way they're handling being the clerk of council.
And that's what this.
Okay,
what
I think I'm not.
Yeah,
What
well,
happens is the clerk of council should serve at the pleasure of the council. And the position may be modified,
maybe I'm,
by a majority of the voted members, not the whole position. It's something in that
Say
line.
the clerk of council should serve the pleasure of council, you just said it, or removed from the position of clerk of council.
Right.
Yes,
Thanks.
Right, thank you.
And C kind of implies that anyway.
Well, yes, that's it, right.
But this is
But
just
they're
a
worried
law,
about
we can
it.
actually make
yeah,
it.
it helps to verify, it's just,
Okay.
yeah. And I think, I don't know if you needed to change A, I think it was all right with it.
Mhm.
I mean, serve in the position of is a non-offensive addition, I think. So here's my time to shine. Down in 3, I'll be honest, in my opinion and my reading of all this, the clerk of council by title, duty, and creation / termination is a creature of council. I would like to delete the second clause of this sentence. I would like to delete and the general supervision of the village administrator.
Can we,
Somebody,
Is the clerk a paid position?
oh, yeah,
Okay, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. So maybe we do have to leave that in then. Okay.
the person doing the duties of clerk of
Right.
council is being paid to do those.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, anyone have any problems then with section 306? I move that we green light the language in section 306 for the council. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Green lit. Alright. Oh, that's all. Alright, 307 was resignation and forfeiture. That was another one that I did email Paul about. What I emailed to him was, we have identified 3 contexts in which a council person loses their seat: resignation, forfeiture, and removal. We could envision the removal option as a catch-all. One person needs to not be on council anymore, but it's not going to happen via forfeiture or resignation. Our question is whether removal via vote from council is permissible under Ohio law, or if the only available mechanism is the next election. His response, basically it was, don't do that, just take out the removal section. I can research this if you really want me to, but I think it would be a bad idea.
Yeah, we pay for
So-
legal counsel for a reason.
Yep. So I actually already,
Okay.
I don't know that there was anything else in this section that we were wondering about. We just read around all of it because we wanted to ask that question of Paul first. The only stuff left is regarding resignation and then the procedure for when someone is found to have forfeited, which we've all already agreed on. So if no one has questions, I would like to move that, oh, yeah. I already took it out when I read his email. So I was just clearing out with everybody now, like everybody's okay with listening to our legal counsel's advice.
I mean, I don't like his advice, but he's a lawyer and I'm not. I mean, I
I was the one who kind of had the idea of adding that in. I understand that no one else does it. Then again, the forfeiture list it covers a lot of ground,
Right.
so,
No, I mean, I'm fine with it. We need to get on with it and, you know,
right.
subsequent charter commissions can deal with that if they wish.
I move that we approve the draft language in section 307.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Approved. All right, section 309 was council meetings. Literally, the reason this was read, we wanted to have Paul tell us whether or not this was a constitutional draft in terms of sunshine laws. His response, yes. So, I propose that we approve the draft language in section 309.
Gosh, you guys are going second, so far too quickly for themselves. I'm not used to this.
All in favor?
Can we talk about fences?
Any opposed? Any abstained? Approved. I'm just going.
Wait, question about.
No, it's just.
You guys, guess what?
Yeah.
Article 3 is done.
Oh, it's a miracle.
Well, it's done pending me adding in that paragraph.
Yeah.
Which I can't currently do because I'm in the village building and can't access my village email.
No, should be able to now, they fixed that.
Anyway.
They fixed that. And I can get to the website today. I don't know why we couldn't get to the website last Thursday, but.
Not a service attack, someone's trying to take it down.
No, because I could get to it on my phone. So it wasn't he couldn't get to it on my phone.
Couldn't, but it's
Yeah.
working now.
Your resolution is, there we go. It's so much prettier now. Instead of one giant long list.
Yeah, look at
Because reading is too, so much prettier.
yes, thanks. Okay. How many people look at the site every week?
Let's see, I have a Mr. Traffic plugin. Not a whole lot, looks like we average, I'll say, somewhere between 5 and 4 visitors a day. I'm at least half of those.
And I was definitely one, the last couple weeks, listening to that previous subject.
Can you tell how many people are meeting?
Yeah, I can do that,
participating in events.
Everybody's in church.
We have one person watching right now, but it counts yourself as the live stream watching, so nobody's watching.
I mean, it's-
currently.
The 441 had one view.
And we,
When I'm not.
we, real quick,
I watch.
we agreed I needed to change 4 persons, this needed to be 3 persons, right? Or is it still, no, it's still 2, but we gotta fix it in the,
In the
Yeah.
transition.
we're fixing it in the transition.
Yes.
Okay, so I have copy pasted
Wait,
in,
wait, say that again?
Wait a minute, let's see.
I'm right here. It's 4 people and then 2 people. No, we did,
No, we
we do
did.
need to switch it to 3.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Alright, so I've copy pasted it in and made it match our formatting. So we all good with 302?
Yes.
Stop.
I'm gonna need you to get your voice back. I'm gonna need that, so can you work on that for Thursday?
Yeah, no one likes the way it runs.
The meeting's moved out.
No, that's not why I said that.
It's fine.
The whispering is,
I don't know, get real quiet.
I know you're yelling.
I can hear her.
I know you're yelling, I know.
Everybody cares about that.
We're just glad you're here, and you're not here.
But Joe Biden.
Alright, we all good? Everybody happy with this?
Yes.
Alright, it's already been approved, I'm gonna agree with it. Alright, Article 3 is done, guys. Cool. Legislative procedure is Article 4. I'm scrolling through. Introduction, reading, and public hearing of ordinance and resolutions. I'm embarrassed to admit that I don't remember what I meant by the blue.
That's what we're just whispering.
It's been a little while, and I know there was a reason, I just don't remember what it was.
We'll read your real quick and then we'll come back to that too.
Distribute a copy. Was it just because we were going back and forth so much on waiver of the public readings and
What's that red bit down there?
oh, maybe that's what it was. I think blue was, this is what we liked, and red was what we were still arguing about.
Do you have something to do with the meeting?
Ah, the whole section wasn't reading that.
Yeah. I don't know why I thought I needed to do that. Okay,
Yeah, in fact, there you go, it starts in my infrastructure business.
you know,
That's probably why.
yeah, so it's 10:30. 10:30, we've got an hour and a half. Let's dig into it, guys. We gotta get this stuff figured out. I got it up on the screen.
I'm sorry.
For number 4, so, section B is dealing with reading, a proposed ordinance has to be read by title on 3 separate days, unless that's waived by council, but it's gotta be a affirmative vote of 6 members. It's readings are title only, copies will be available for public inspection. Resolutions not in written form when introduced shall be reduced to written form. And then
So wait, go back. We're saying that, it needs 6 members of council
to waive the 3 readings rule.
to waive any of it. So the way it's written in statute, I know this is charter, is that, you're supposed to have 3 readings. You have to, vote to suspend the rules, even if you've had 2 readings, and you just want to suspend the 3rd. It's
I think you
not
can have
always,
vote at any time, yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's not always getting rid of all three.
Right.
It could be just getting, so do we want 6? I mean, because we've been sort of backing down and having it be 5 in
Yeah,
places.
I feel like 5 is sort of our super majority.
yeah, I think you're right.
Are we sure it's 5? Because I thought 6
The
was.
last couple times we've talked supermajority, we said 5.
And that was specifically on Paul Rudder's recommendation, that 6 is just hard to do. We don't wanna have
So-
council.
I think he specifically said I was being.
So my recollection is that we
We wanted
put
to
a
really.
lot of discussion into this, and we wanted it to be difficult to
Yeah.
waive readings. We wanted it to require 5 people to agree, this is important and time sensitive, and we're gonna waive a reading or 3.
And I think 5 will do it. You really could have, you do it 6 and only 6 people are there that time.
We're down a seat and one person's sick. I was full on 6. I've come down to 5. So.
I think,
I might be the only one that's still saying, I think we need 6.
so
I think it should be really hard to waive readings, I do.
So should we then make 6 our standard or 5?
Yes.
Could we then-
You can have somebody that's just being constant and can slow things down.
Yeah. And it would only take one of those.
Sorry, hey, Brady was trying to talk, sorry, Ryan.
I've never seen anyone disagree with me. It's always been like that. So 5 or 6. I've never seen it not here.
No, I agree. So I've only, in my 6 years of council watching or being on council, I've only seen a dissent on waiving of readings in 2 occurrences. And they were pretty important.
Yeah.
So, but it's a.
Internal consistency, if we've gone with 5, we've gone with
I
5.
think internal consistency being the thing now, yeah, that's why that's the biggest reason why I'm okay with 5, because we generally lowered our bar for supermajority.
Mhm. So,
I have one question.
yeah,
I know this is not the point at which we insert language to offer things for immediate legislation that don't have to.
that's a little further, it's a little
That's
further down.
farther
A little further down. So in section B, which is about waiving readings by, the general rule is 3 readings unless it's waived. That last rule, number 4 there, council may not dispense with reading of legislation that substantially pertains to Brian's idea. I will admit that I think that is messy and that I kind of don't really like it, but for those who weren't, but for those who were not here when Kim Pulley came to talk to us, she didn't word it the same way Brian did, but she was talking about more or less wanting to do the same thing, like she really was recommending that there be some kind of mechanism written in so that some legislation can move faster.
Right,
Right.
financial legislation needs to move faster, yes.
And that point, the example she gave was.
Appointing a police
And
officer.
there are, in some draft charters that deal with that section, a nice list that really had nothing that would offend any of us in it. I just don't know how to get it.
Shelley, if you could send that to me, I would appreciate it. Maybe I can bring it back to us on Thursday
I'm just
with
not
some better
sure.
language.
I just don't remember what it does.
So we,
I will admit to my personal bias that I think all legislation should be slow and well thought out unless absolutely demonstrably necessary. And I recognize that, yeah, we don't want to make a police officer wait 3 months before they can start working. I absolutely get that. I'm hesitant to make it too easy or too broad to waive these readings, because otherwise the tendency is going to be to waive the readings just all the time.
And that's
my personal opinion.
that is the tendency,
I don't like
the tendency now, and I agree with you, but at the same time, I don't know that this is one of those things that I don't know that we have a choice.
so I'm looking at some of the times, when we're not talking about
I mean-
money, are we talking about only money things?
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean,
Okay.
this draft language was me mirroring what Brian had.
So I've known times where we've had to renew a tax study. And somebody wasn't paying attention, and there is a deadline. That you have, and it's gonna go on the ballot, and there's a deadline, you have to get it down to the Board of Elections. Somebody's not paying attention, and we've got to get this piece of legislation passed and get it down to the Board of Elections. And the only way to do it is to waive readings.
So here's my thing though, Pam, there's a whole procedure above that deals with that situation. If you got 5 members of council all going, hey, we just had a special meeting called, we gotta get this levy in by tomorrow, this has to happen,
So
then it happens. So why create another general rule on top of the general rule and the exception?
I see. So we are talking about the money issue. Okay.
Well, wait, no, I think we're at 2 different places.
Yeah.
Are we talking about what legislation? Because I think Shelley's talking about with her list of things that don't have to wait.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
we're talking about-
emergency slash.
Yeah, yeah.
immediate.
We're still talking about the readings rule, we're not talking about
That's
emergency
okay.
immediate legislation.
So
In terms of waiving the readings, there's a general rule at the top that says there shall be 3 readings. We have created a procedure allowing council to waive some or all of those readings.
Right.
And then another level below that, the proposal on the table is that we create apparently a laundry list of things that don't need to have the 3 readings in the first place. The general rule doesn't apply to these special classes of legislation. And I gotta say that I'm uncomfortable with that.
no, that I don't even know that was the proposal on the table. I think
That was my interpretation.
Yeah.
Okay, no, what I was talking about is that we had discussed having the list of things enumerated that are going to take effect immediately on the emergency
We were-
legislation.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
what
don't require.
we're not there yet.
We're not there.
But
So,
so back to Pam's question. So in your situation that you've been in,
Yeah.
right? So in number 4 there, which was my language, right, cannot dispense with legislation substantially pertaining to infrastructure zoning for expenditures, I do not believe putting an item, tax item
No,
on the
no,
ballot
right.
would apply. So you could still waive the readings here.
Yes,
Again, my point in this language was to force 3 readings
no matter what.
for these items that I feel are consistently our most contentious. And therefore, there cannot be the argument, council just pushed that through. Now, they can still push it through on 3 consecutive days, but.
They can hold 2 special meetings after a general meeting, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it still have to be three different days, so it's 3 consecutive days, but when that happens, people will hopefully wake up and say, hey, wait a second, why are they meeting
3 days.
3 consecutive
so
days?
what's the dollar amount?
Well, that's what we have to determine. That's our last argument.
Didn't Paul Rutter kind of, wasn't he a little hesitant about this
He
idea?
was, because my take was that he didn't like the word infrastructure, because what is infrastructure? And so, and I don't know that I think I had taken the fact that we could change that to,
Capital improvements?
sewer, water line,
Street light.
sewer, water line, and,
So you're suggesting that we say if legislation pertains to capital improvements, zoning, or any project that is more than X amount of dollars, there is no mechanism by which to waive a reading any or all of the readings.
so.
That is what you're suggesting, right?
But that was that suggestion. I would, upon additional cogitation, change the word infrastructure to sanitary or storm sewer, right? And then set that dollar amount at $20,000. And one more thing, I would make it,
Nothing.
I know.
Yeah,
So that's my come out. But I would say waive no more than 1 reading. So.
you don't like 20,000, I don't want it to be more than 5.
Yeah.
So, and
Sorry, bring him back to talk.
I don't know, it's never gonna be valid for that long.
That's the-
I was gonna put it at 500,000.
Oh my God, no, absolutely
That's
not.
way too high.
I was like, you want to spend more than $500,000? You gotta have three readings.
So,
But not for five, not for 29. We gotta get- I agree with Franny.
Well,
Because we've got council members.
And touchy subject here because of our previous discussion on the internal consistency, but what if we did away with 4 and upped it to either 6 or unanimous? If you really think it's so important that this needs done now, if the situation is actually that important and that time sensitive, then everybody on council can get together and waive those readings.
That's gonna
no,
be.
no, that's a different,
Yeah.
are you're suggesting this just in this?
Just in
in
this
special
section,
case?
just for readings, I am not talking about immediate effect.
Well, and not general readings, right? I think general legislation, 5 is fine. In these cases sliced out in 4, we could raise the bar instead to 6 or unanimous or what have you.
I gotta be honest, Brian, I don't really see the difference between general legislation and infrastructure legislation and zoning legislation. I want 3 readings whenever humanly possible for any legislation.
I agree with you, and I don't even know why,
You don't know why you agree with me?
no, I don't know why we don't. Either, my opinion is either we make it, I agree with, that's a good solution. 6 or
Maybe 6 or
unanimous,
7 or something.
or,
And then we're not trying to laundry list out, what does infrastructure mean? Because at some point, someone's gonna ask the question on council, well, what does infrastructure even mean? I think I can make an argument for this project not being infrastructure.
but however, I think we need to choose a dollar amount.
I need to know how it's gonna be worded, because I'm listening.
I would like to not choose a dollar amount. I would like to make it a general freaking rule that it'd be really, really difficult to waive ratings.
I think
I'm
it
sorry,
should
that this is
be,
important to me.
I agree, but I also think we need, yes, the 6 or 7 and a dollar amount, because it's possible,
So
not probable.
I'm gonna go back to Brian's example from a few weeks ago. A stop sign costs $500.
Yeah.
So therefore, adding a stop sign is gonna be less than any dollar amount we're ever gonna put in this charter. But that person was up in arms about it.
Well, the particular project was a $17,000 project.
The point I'm actually making here is, I don't know that the dollar amount is what's important. What's important is the maximum possible availability of the information for the longest period of time possible before legislation is enacted. We can say there was a proposal made at a general council meeting. There was 3 full readings of the proposal. There was all this other stuff. And then the stop sign gets put in, and it doesn't matter that it only cost $500 or that it pertained to infrastructure.
All right, so what you want to say in line
I wanna
4 is,
delete- I wanna
you want to
delete
delete line 4,
I
you
wanna
just
delete
want to
line
say,
4.
if you want to waive
Yeah.
readings, any readings,
You gotta
then you have to
everyone
have
agree.
6 or 7 people agree.
That's what I want, that's my proposal.
Are you still gonna have the list of the ones that can take effect immediately?
Yeah.
Yes, that's completely
Yes.
separate from immediate effect.
Yes, so you can still hire a police officer immediately.
But you have to have 3 readings.
No. Or 6 council members willing to waive readings.
If you wanna hire a police officer at the Monday night thing, you can have 6 of the council members agree, we're gonna waive the readings, we're gonna hire the person, we're gonna pass this emergency legislation, and they can start work tomorrow.
Remember, I hear you, and I know how important readings are.
Down
And-
in
We agreed,
or
part of the reason that this charter is being done is because things don't get done in the village.
Yes,
And I think saying you have 3 readings, and people are on vacation, and there's not 6 people around, and things have to get done. You have to be able to just, we have to dispatching, we have to sign that contract for dispatching services. We get it after the deadline that was supposed to be signed. Now, sure, we just blow it off and say, too bad, we're gonna get it late. But there are times when you can get things to do after the date they were done.
That's
And
true.
You have to be able to just say, this is no biggie, we do it every 2 years.
The state, the county, they do send things late.
Rainy.
I think this is a bit of a conversation.
No, let's,
Well, but there's people who want to have contributions. who aren't.
they will, and they can contribute again on Thursday.
No, no.
No, let's just say we greenlighted this, if you don't like it, then say your piece.
Let's trust council, let's trust the people, and then if they continue to buy buildings, you know, without us knowing it, then at the review,
Brian.
they can.
Best decision you could have ever made.
I think more red, and I think that people are gonna have.
All right,
business to say.
We should just define, let's just do it so that things can get done and trust that when it's a bad idea, 5 people will think it's a bad idea.
We can't trust that. I completely disagree with you. And historically, we cannot trust that, and you know that.
Of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pieces of legislation that have been passed, thousands of pieces of legislation, we can't say that we have to have 3 readings just because there were a couple times where.
This is not accurate, and one of the reasons that it's not accurate is because one of the things that has held up this legislation issue is the people responsible for putting the legislation together didn't get it into your hands in time for you to read it until you had to vote on it. No, and then it was passed as an emergency, and 4 of the 5 council members never even read the legislation. No, he's right. He is absolutely right, and this is a consistent problem. Everybody in the village has agreed this is a consistent problem. And I'm done with that happening.
There's a big difference between getting it, having 1 reading, and then, not having the last 2, versus saying everything needs to be.
So let me provide some context here. I'm gonna turn it 30 degrees. Everybody's unhappy with transparency and all those things, right? Everyone's, and as you said, people are also generally unhappy with things not getting done. I would like to suggest to you that we're solving problem 2 with the mayor administrator sections. We are creating a new era, a new paradigm shift, where there's going to be a mayor and administrator working together with clearly defined duties. Everyone knows what they're in charge of and what they're not in charge of. And so boots on the ground level stuff is going to start getting done. But we can also solve our transparency issues by doing things like saying legislation should be slow. I'm sorry, but it should be. Legislation as a general rule should be slow. And then there's a mechanism to make it faster when you need to. But I don't want the general rule to be that it's super easy to waive the readings, and then it becomes an afterthought. It was, oh yeah, well, of course we'll waive the readings, that's what we do for every legislation. I don't want that. I want legislation to be slow and well thought out.
Which I want to say before, I totally get what you're saying. I don't want to hamstring the council, but historically, I feel like this is the fallback for our council. Has been, not just this one, but as long as I have been here, legislation has been passed as an emergency often. It's not an exception.
No,
It happens often.
So,
Okay, sorry, Marianne.
sometimes, there's a difference between ordinances and resolutions. A resolution can be, let's thank Brian Wolf for serving on council,
Sure.
okay?
Yeah.
And resolutions are sometimes just, we resolve to do this. Ordinances, I think everything that's zoning has to be an ordinance. I think a lot of financial things have to be ordinance driven, but they have to be by ordinance, unless we would change that somehow. Is there a way to say that ordinances have to have 3 readings?
Each ordinance shall be read by title.
Not
It's in
resolution.
section B.
And let resolutions, because sometimes hiring somebody is, I think, a resolution. And a lot of things are done, it's just daily business.
Well,
So just to remind
you just
everyone,
pointed this out, that B says each ordinance, not motion.
so,
I know, but I'm
so
wondering-
just to give everyone the context on what Pam's talking about. up in section 401, which is now on the screen, a resolution is legislation of a temporary, informal, or ceremonial nature, and an ordinance is a general or permanent decision.
Yes.
So, and when we look down at,
Go up to the resolution again and see if it's inclusive. That's a little hard for me to
where did you want me to go? Sorry. I was-
A resolution is,
Oh, it's a, here.
Oh, yeah.
okay. Okay, that's one. Okay.
So
Yeah, as a-
that language that we're arguing about is about ordinances. Each ordinance shall be read by title on 3 separate days.
So
Do you
resolutions
have
do
anything
not
about
require.
The way this is written, a resolution can be passed that night. But here's my thing, a resolution is not gonna be used to appropriate $75,000 for a project. It's not gonna be used to make it illegal to park on the right-hand side of the street. That's not what a resolution is for.
Sure.
I want an ordinance to be read 3 freaking times, I'm sorry.
So we're debating whether to take 4 hours, is that?
I would like to
is
take
that-
out 4 and make it harder to waive. That's my proposal.
So can we talk about hearing out waiving reading? So waiving 1 reading is easier than waiving 2 readings. Would that work as a compromise? So if you're only waiving you've had 2 readings, you need 5. If you're waiving 2 readings, right, because you've got to read it at least once to waive the rest of the readings. So waiving 2 readings is 6. That,
It'll be too confusing.
It would be kind of complicated.
It is
I think it's doable, but it is complicated.
I'm just
I
throwing
like
out
to do,
ideas.
I like having this, definition of resolution and things. I'd be willing to go back and look at our resolutions and ordinances and see in historically, what has been resolution, what has been ordinance, and look to see if there's enough of a differentiation that we can define it, what resolutions are, that can go ahead and be done quicker. But with things that are ordinances,
What I don't want to see though is another loophole. I don't want a situation where there's a council that says, yeah, we really don't like this 3 reading rule, so we're gonna get around it by calling everything a resolution. I don't
So,
Unless
want
we-
that.
Okay, yeah, because under section 404, each emergency ordinance or resolution shall require an affirmative vote of at least 500. That's kind of
Well, we're-
addresses this too.
We're talking about,
This is under vote required for passage. I presume that.
Yeah, but
All of them.
what you just read, that's if you want to pass something as for immediate effect, pass it as an emergency.
so.
That's different from the reading.
So I have 2 thoughts about this, right? If we are going back historically to how ordinances and resolutions were used, that doesn't take into play how we have outlined how they should be used going forward.
Yeah.
But, right, knowing that past performance is the best predictor we have for future action, we can look, and it's easy because it's right on the village website. Yeah, 2019, we passed resolutions for a consulting contracts to fix the pool walls, to set the pool fees, the landscape design contract, the Officer Pocock resignation, the sale of the police cruiser.
those are not temporary and informal.
And there's money in there, right? I mean, there's contracts being adopted in resolution. So I feel like there is,
I think those are temporary in nature. I think most people would argue that saying, hey, we're gonna spend $5,000 to fix the pool.
No, 70,000, 50,000. It was big.
If they,
54.
well, I guess that's.
And getting rid of or having a police officer resign is permanent.
it's both permanent
Yeah.
and there was a severance.
Right.
That's a big deal.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. Now, I
I'm gonna
know
be
that,
difficult about this, I'm sorry.
Right, but what I'm saying is that I think we need to go back and first off readdress resolutions necessarily.
Maybe firm that language, because I can guarantee you that it was copy paste.
So either, I think that we need to do a few things, we need to either shore up what can be a resolution or require readings on both resolutions and ordinances. And that still doesn't solve
that still doesn't
waiving
solve
readings.
Pam's problem.
Unless we define ordinances, as some of these things that are really important, and everything else will be a resolution.
But we'll never have a complete list of all the important stuff.
Rainy.
How much of that is just more planning on our part and we should have planned better versus we couldn't have planned?
In my watchings, over the last 6 years, I think that the village has gotten a lot better with planning. So 5 years ago, all of our annual contracts came up right to their deadline, and they were, at that time, typically all had waived readings and passes emergency because, our contracts with legal counsel, village engineer, all of those things would hit the deadline, we're like, oh, but over the last 5 years, that has gotten a lot better, right? There's a better plan for passing a single piece of legislation, that all of those annual type contracts all get done at once, right? Right, and so that in general has gotten better, but that there's no guarantee that that will stay.
I don't want to legislate for planning. If it's a true need, that's one thing. If it's that we just need to get our act together, plan better, we're hiring someone to do that.
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
That's true. I've heard times, I know times where we've talked about something for months on end.
Yeah,
And, really we know about it, et cetera. When we're finally done and we're ready to pass it,
You're up against the deadline.
we're up against the cap, or, my gosh, we've talked this to death, let's just go ahead and pass it and everybody's fine. And so it's not bad planning, it's just that by the time.
It's bad paper.
Bad paper.
Right, it's been fully vetted, fully discussed, the final product is golden, you have 6 people agreeing, right, might as well get it done.
Do we want to legislate support time management and do we want to legislate how it should be people set up with that? It's a need versus.
And I don't disagree, but because there are always going to be cases where it's the other, right? It's not poor planning or poor time management. We need an escape valve. We need an opportunity for when those waived readings have to happen. And it's a matter of, as a community, where do you feel the bar is? What's the threshold? That's how I see this discussion.
I think so too, I think they're,
Oh, right.
you know what, Pam, I agree with you that you guys have talked the matter to death. And rightfully so, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, rightfully so, you needed to do so. And then at the very last minute, you said, okay, we gotta do this, and you passed it as an emergency. I have seen that happen.
or wait, last.
Or waive the last readings, yes, I have seen that happen. And I think that that is a legitimate process.
So, slight tangent, but answering kind of an earlier question of when should we be using an ordinance versus when we should be using a resolution. It occurred to me the best way to explain that to ourselves is to say, is this something that should be codified?
That's how I always like to do it.
Because you're not gonna codify the hiring of Officer Smith.
Right.
You would codify, this is, there shall be a police chief in Minerva Park. That is something that would be codified.
Right.
So hopefully,
Other than that.
council is using that in the form of their legislation, but because of that, I'm gonna be that guy, and I'm gonna say that each resolution and ordinance shall be read by, I think we need to have the word resolution.
I agree, because again, there was a $50,000 project for the pools that was done by a resolution.
And I don't like that that's that can be done without readings.
Right. So you need to include resolution there. I 100% agree with that, but again, we also need to have that escape valve, because we have a truth of the matter is that with that project, they were, I don't remember if it was passed as an emergency or not, I don't know. But that project had a very tight timeline, right? I think they actually had a special meeting maybe to read it,
Yeah, and only because they needed to get it through
Yeah.
the time.
to get all the contracts open the pool. So there is if this is a service that we want to continue, we need to, but I believe they wound up having a special meeting, because I don't think they waived readings. It's not indicated here, I'd have to go back to the minutes. But that would be a situation where waiving readings may have been reasonable to get the work done.
Obviously, it wasn't necessarily the same option for that.
Because they,
There are other tools.
Well, quick question, how many people do we have to have here again to have a quorum? Because
we had decided 8 was a quorum. and we're-
okay, so we have 9. I realize it's just not, hey, Sid walked out, do we still have a quorum?
I don't think anybody has said there don't need to be readings, because when you introduce it, it is the first reading. So everything always has a first reading.
Right.
We may have just gotten it in front of us when we sat down, but it always gets a first reading. So really, we're just talking about
3,
the second,
the
the
second,
third.
third.
And so, where it says may not dispose with the readings, well, you can't dispose with all the readings, by definition, the first. Introduction is the first reading.
Yeah,
So-
subsequent readings.
To,
Yeah, so it's whether or not we can.
to address what Rainey said, this pool thing, no matter what, no matter how they did it, it was done because of poor planning. It was done because of poor planning, and Rainey just said, really what we want to do is curtail poor planning.
Or to put it another way, why reward bad behavior?
Why reward bad behaviors?
I'm sorry, but if council can't get its act together, and and maybe they should suffer the consequences of, well, we missed this contract, the people get to know that we missed this contract.
And that is my feeling. Council's incompetence needs to be felt by the people who vote for them.
I am not a fan of cutting off my nose to spite my face.
I am.
And that is that is the risk we run, right? I do believe in feeling consequences. I don't know, I am trying to play this through in a practical sense, right?
Yeah.
And while certainly, right, if we're gonna use the pool thing going on as a test case, right? Certainly there was poor planning, but it wasn't necessarily this council's poor planning, right? Because it's the the lack of continued maintenance over 20 years, right? And it's just that it went from, we'll kick the can to we can no longer kick the can.
Right.
Right? And now that we can no longer kick the can and we want to open the pool on time, we have a limited time frame.
Great.
I feel like your example is flawed, because they didn't have to wait a week. They didn't use their escape valve, and they still accomplished it.
No, I don't know that I'll have to look. I haven't looked to see if they waive ratings, but if it was a situation where they couldn't get 4 people together for a special council meeting, again, it is an opportunity. It is right. So I hear what you're saying. I just think it's another tool that is common and useful.
Yeah.
No, we originally said 6, so I'm flexible to 6.
All right, let me maybe refocus us, I guess. Who here feels, by a show of hands, that we need B4, the language in red that's up on the screen? That's Brian's idea.
It or something like.
Well, first of all, we've already said that you can't dispense with all, it's technically impossible to dispense with all the readings, because the first reading, when it's presented.
Something like it.
Yeah, and so,
So who,
you're saying council may not dispense with the second and third readings.
Yeah.
if it pertains to village infrastructure zoning and expenditures of more than an amount. Who here thinks that there should be a section 4 of any kind, or
It depends on, again, it depends on, are we then saying that it takes 6 or 7 people to waive the readings?
we're saying, well, and that would be, certainly be my proposal.
I'd like to put another perspective on it.
Sure.
If there's anything, people have come up to me and told me that they want to see in this charter, it's some kind of language that keeps them from passing these things as an emergency. Being able to hide, you've got to tell them that they've got to put something in there that keeps council or the administration from sliding anything past people by going, oh, we're gonna pass this as an
We're gonna waive the
emergency.
readings, we're gonna pass it as an emergency, we're gonna do this, that.
Right, and in the meantime, it's not been posted on the website with the council package. Yeah, now, these things are posted now, right? But they don't have the language on, here's a council package, you're gonna go see, we're gonna review ordinance number this and that. This is gonna be the first reading. Wonderful, when the language of the ordinance wasn't attached to that.
And we started to address that in some of them, that last one we started to address in some of the other sections here, we're putting in language requiring, like, it'll be read by title, but the full language of the proposed legislation would be on the website. I think we put that in there.
Yeah, so how about, I have an idea, how about we put a wall between waiving readings and passing it as an emergency, right?
That's what I was,
So if you waive a reading, you cannot pass as an emergency.
Doesn't that run counter to some of the stuff that?
Yeah, we are
if
compromising.
you don't pass it to take effect immediately, you have to wait 30 days
Right.
before it becomes.
So here's your, right, so I think. we-
How does that solve a problem?
So I'll get to it here. So I think that we've come to a point where we know nobody's gonna be happy here, right? We're gonna have to compromise. So if the need is transparency, right? And it needs to go into effect immediately, by saying you can't waive readings and have an emergency, then you have to have 3 readings for it to go into effect immediately.
So I
If you
understand.
want it to go into effect immediately,
Really quickly, I understand what you're doing, but I think you're actually solving 2 different and distinct problems. And here's why. At the end of the day, your solution doesn't actually solve the problem that I'm identifying with readings, because readings are before the legislation is passed, and the timeline for it to take effect is after. So if my problem is people aren't being given enough opportunity to know what is being voted on in the future, then saying, well, okay, we waived the readings, but it can't take effect for 30 days anyway. The legislation's already passed, whether I like it or not.
But
It's
if you-
been passed, it just takes effect in 30 days instead of.
but if you don't like it, right, either way, whether the primary purpose for someone to like or dislike a piece of legislation is what action can they take? Once it's passed, if you feel strongly enough that this was bad legislation, right, you have 30 days to get enough of your friends in the neighborhood to sign a petition to referendum. So that's the compromise, right? If you're waiving readings, you have to allow the 30-day referendum period. If you don't waive readings, right, then you've given enough public opportunity for people to speak their piece, and then you can allow for it to go into effect immediately.
Although these 3 readings could be done.
They could be on 3 consecutive days, but that's, again, that
I like where you're going.
should bring enough public interest.
I don't think,
Because
I
what
think a
we're
referendum is a good enough solution for this issue, but.
Okay, I think it's worth pointing out that one of the current council members, one of the things that he hated the most, and one of the reasons that he ran, one of the many, but it was a big reason, was to stop council from passing legislation as an emergency, and the system the current system the council works under is so broken
That it has to be.
concerning this, that he has consistently said yes to passing legislation as an emergency while shaking his head all along as he's doing it, like, God, I'm doing this again, how is this happening to me?
It's not as bad as it seems. It sounds so horrible to say an emergency, when it's just, we need to get this done. So, have we agreed that we are gonna have a list of things that will take effect immediately?
I hope so.
And so what we're,
That-
so we're,
Again, I'm gonna keep reminding us, there's a difference between
Right, yeah, no,
readings
that's-
and immediate legislation.
so really what we're talking about is the reading.
We're talking about the readings, and so that's like I said, in my mind, I'm differentiating between before the vote and after the vote. We can have all the conversations we want about what happens after the vote. I'm frankly, a little less concerned about that. What I'm concerned about is the transparency before the vote. I want people to have as many opportunities as is reasonably possible to know about legislation before it's voted on.
But I agree with you, referendum, giving a 30-day period for every one of these things where something referendum, that's not a good enough solution to
Well,
this
frankly,
problem.
counterproductive.
What?
It's counterproductive.
It is also counterproductive. And
Kevin,
Yeah, so it feels to me like we've spent about an hour trying to get to a compromise here, and it seems like the positions are pretty concrete on either side. So it might behoove us just to sort of vote on this and then move forward.
all right,
Because it seems like, well, whether to include this or not, whether to include a section like this or not. And if the vote is to include it, then we can hash out the details. And if the vote is not to include it, then we can get rid of it and move on, because I feel like we're not gonna reach a compromise here.
And we're just talking about 4.
Correct.
so regarding B4, which is up there right now at the bottom of the screen in red, raise your hand if you would like to have a section like that, not necessarily these exact words, but a section like that in this chart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
five against 4.
Not because I think it's necessary, it's because the people will be voting on this charter.
It's not defined well enough for me to vote.
Yeah, maybe we need to try again and redefine something like this, because again,
So I guess so the people who voted no,
Mhm.
or didn't vote for it, what would you like to see? Now that we're moving forward, we've decided to sort of try and work some language in. What would make you happy with this? Like, how would you like this work?
I don't think it goes far enough.
I think there are times where you need to dispense with readings. And yet, I do, I do, and, just,
You know what, you're not wrong. The problem here is you're not wrong, and then neither are we, that it's being consistently taken advantage of, like, this is a real
I guess,
finesse.
let me clarify my vote, I guess, I know this is complicated. The reason I voted to say that this should not be in here is because frankly, I don't think it goes far enough.
Right.
I think the general rule should be that it is very difficult to waive readings. So if I had my way, I'd remove 4 and make it take 6 people.
right.
But if you're not willing to do that, if everyone thinks that we need 4, then I want it to be real extensive. I want it to be a big laundry list of things that you can't waive readings for.
But see, I would, in that instance, I'd have the bar be really high, like really big amounts of money, all zoning things, and that's it.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. I would like a high bar, but I think there's lots of problems with making a laundry list because there's always gonna be something that doesn't fit the laundry list, or that someone can argue, lawyer their way to say, well, the laundry list doesn't really apply to this situation. Whereas if we just say, hey, it takes 6 people to waive readings, that applies to everything across the board. If it's actually important enough, you'll get your 6 votes, and then you move on.
But there's gonna be times when you won't even have you won't have 6 people at a meeting.
or you only have 5
If
people
it's
on.
really that important and that time sensitive, then maybe the council should get 6 people at their meeting, or they should call a special meeting the next day.
Here's the biggest reason 6 that I see. I'm not saying 6 is wrong, but I'm saying The biggest problem I see with 6 is that we can point to at least 2 times in the last 5 years that we've been down to council. So that means, to me, that feels like a fairly regular occurrence.
It is.
So then that would mean that in those fairly regular occurrences, if we had a true emergency come up, we'd be stuck.
Rating,
So in the one community of these visits, 5 people want to keep us. Okay. If you could disagree that it's gonna have to be there, then I'll ask the top to be at the top. Can we take this one for Thursday? Get off the other one back on us to be where we want to be, just so we want to be.
I mean, we may have to take out a vote with the whole
Yeah.
commission, and then
Yeah.
that might change, because,
Yeah.
so.
If any of you guys, on this one, I'm actually gonna go ahead and kind of open this up over the next 4 or 5 days. If any of you think of any draft language that would fit in there that you'd like to propose, please email it to me. I'll have it ready to put up on the screen. This is just about as bad as form of government, I think, because I'll be honest, I'm pretty entrenched and I'm gonna be loud about it.
Yeah, and I'm
So-
entrenched too. I mean, this, and
Just
Shelley is absolutely right.
Why don't you take open and move forward with it? Because if you're not willing to compromise or move, then you're not willing to compromise and move, then we can just talk about this forever
Never get
and never get done.
Right.
So we're
I would say I'd like
We
to
don't
vote
want
the
everything.
ethical commission.
I agree 100% with you.
And I would like some clarification in your select headed. So the difference of opinion is there are those of us who feel that no reason should be waived.
No matter what the thing.
No matter what the thing. No.
It's
reading
not
to
dependent
anything.
on
It shall not be waived
I know
unless,
that's what
it should be a really high bar to waive the reading
Okay.
for anything. I don't care if it's about infrastructure or about money or about a stop sign. It should just be really, really difficult to waive the reading.
Okay, and then the other side is that you've got to have some leeway to waive some things because that's the way life is. Is that, I just want to make sure the argument is clear in my own mind so I can think about
So, and,
it. Okay,
so Randy and I are talking about, it's got these 2 parts. It's about what are they voting on?
It's true.
And then, should there always be 3 votes or not? Yeah, or, you know, 3 readings or not? So it's 2 kind of different pots, because I'm over here on what they're voting on, because I just know there's some things that they're, and Kelly's over here with everything should get 3 readings.
Well, and that's,
Whenever possible.
and I think it's I think that's what makes it different. You know, there are things that
That wasn't my problem.
No, I mean, controversial or, fairly non-consequential. You know,
maybe I was brainy and you've got to trust your council. And if you take Kelly's compromise of 6 votes on council,
I thought we were gonna take this right back.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, let's get rid of the mayor.
Yeah, I'm all into that.
So what I'm gonna do is, I made a note to myself, I'm gonna send an email to the whole charter commission, the next day or so, so that everyone who's not here has a chance to kind of think this.
How about we have 3 different things, ordinances, resolutions, hey, just little community thing.
No.
It was a joke, I mean.
All right.
Like, it's just a memo.
Ordinance.
All right, guys, let's focus back in. Moving on to C, I don't remember if we had an issue with this or not. Follows public hearing of any proposed legislation, so follows publication by no less than 7 days, may be held separately or in conjunction with a regular or special council meeting. Public hearings may be adjourned or recessed from time to time. Public hearings may be dispensed with for an emergency ordinance. I gotta be honest, I don't remember whether we had a problem with this or not. I may have redlined the whole section because we were arguing over something
Yeah,
else.
I remember that on a section level, so I feel like if we were arguing about that, the whole section got redlined. So this
Yeah.
might not be good.
If no one has anything to say about C, I'm gonna move on to D. Procedure for public hearings shall be determined by the council rules, not inconsistent with this section. Public hearing of a resolution shall be conducted at the time of its introduction. Public hearing of an ordinance shall be conducted at the next designated meeting subsequent to its introduction, unless otherwise specified by council. Unless dispensed with by council, a public hearing of an emergency ordinance shall be conducted at the time of its introduction. Upon closing the public hearing and after discussion by council, council may adopt the legislation with or without amendment, reject it, or table it. Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any problem with this wording, but now I have to admit, I'm firmly entrenched that nothing ever should be, I don't even care now I don't even care if it's hiring a police officer. Now I want everything to be read 3 times and I want people to vote on it, and now I don't care. So yeah, this section is fine with me. It's also fine with me if this section is eliminated entirely.
Have you defined what a public hearing is? I think that's what we just talked about this before. Some things require public hearing.
So council rules, define the procedure. It's not specifically, like, the words public hearing are not defined, although I
That was our hang up with this.
Yes, it was.
Is that what it was?
It was the definition of public
The
hearing.
zoning regulations require public hearings. It's like this thing where you send out announcements to people that are gonna be impacted, and you have to advertise it for,
what
you
if,
know,
As the tax budget, the passage of the tax budget requires.
a public hearing. It's like this.
why don't I do this? Why don't I email Paul Rudder asking if public hearing is something that's defined in Ohio legislation? If it is, we can literally just do a throwaway public hearing as defined by Ohio Revised Code, blah, blah, blah.
It is
Shall be
different from just a public meeting where people can come and talk about this.
Is that a good plan though, me?
Yeah.
emailing Paul?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And we're doing a separate definition session, right?
Somebody
Where
mentioned
I
that.
think so.
Where we say.
I think so, yeah. So if it's not already defined in Ohio Revised Code, we can just define it for ourselves. Alright. So what I'm gonna do is actually blue line C and D.
Yeah.
And remember what blue means.
And I'm gonna write down blue,
These definitions are.
not arguing any.
Because a public hearing isn't a chance for the public to hear about something. If that makes any sense.
Yes.
It's
It's,
this is what we're doing. We have to, by law, tell you, or by rule, tell you what we're doing.
Right. Okay, so we have beaten this horse and now we're kicking the can down.
And then I need to tell you that you're about to lose your quorum, because I have to be an hour and a half away from here at 1 o'clock. I'm extending that a little bit, so we got a few more minutes.
All right. Sorry, we couldn't get more done, guys.
Oh, that's okay.
it was good.
Sorry. Yes, I move that we adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Cool. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you kindly.
There's-
It's sad, you're right.
Oh, yeah, this is not one for me. I feel bad that I'm being so entrenched. Frankly, this was one of the reasons that I wanted to be on the chart.